For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Welcome to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees with Bonnie Orr. Each week, Bonnie and her co-host Dan Kuntz walk you through the do's and don'ts, the challenges, and the rewards of gardening in North Central Washington. So, let's garden.
Welcome to today's edition of Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees. I am Dan Kuntz. She is Bonnie Orr. We love her. We respect her. Everything about Bonnie Orr is wonderful. And this is by far, I've not been this excited about filming an episode until today. I am ready to go.
Not even the ones where we had cookies?
Cookies are later.
Cookies are later. Okay. Wow, we're here on this beautiful day in the most fabulous setting in the Wenatchee Valley right now. It doesn't matter where you go, this is it. We're at the trailhead for Day Road, and this is the Land Trust manages this trail section. Mm-hmm. And we have a person who's going to help us walk through and learn about sage step ecology.
Which is everything, everybody's talking about that nowadays.
That's right.
Which is good.
Which is good. And also we're going to identify some wildflowers.
Yeah, and what a banner year for wildflowers, because we've had this cool, wet spring. It's May 4th as we film this, and we have to do that, because it's a beautiful, sunny, warm day, and the hills are alive with the sound of music.
Indeed. Indeed they are.
I can't wait. Introduce our guest.
Our special guest is Don Schechtel, and Don is the president of the Washington Native Plant Society
Wenatchee Valley Chapter.
Yes,
we got it.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
And this man is just a wealth of knowledge. We're going to appreciate you so much today, Don. Thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be with you.
And we're going to get a little exercise in too.
We are.
Yeah. Outside of me using a shovel, which is normal.
Let's just have a look here behind us on the hillside. Is this just
beautiful?
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Okay, and so here we are right now, and of course, this sage is what sage step is all about.
Right here.
Right here. And this, one of the neat things about this is when they name plants, okay, this one's second name is trilobata, which means 3 lobes.
3 lobes.
See, it's easy to figure out a name when you can look at the leaf and figure out what it is. Isn't that wonderful? Artemisia?
Yeah, Artemisia tridentata,
right.
and sometimes the names are really good, sometimes the names aren't so helpful.
Oh,
so
you're going to tell us that, so we have to be...
We'll have, this is a good one. Some of them are impronounceable, but Artemisia tridentata.
I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot of Latin before this show is over. I'll be
right.
able to write prescriptions.
But you will not have to genuflex.
Fair enough. Are you ready to take a hike and get busy?
I want to talk about
One
the
more thing?
invaders.
Okay,
some
please do.
invaders in here. Okay. Okay. We have this guy flew in.
He doesn't belong.
This is Russian thistle.
I got it. I got it.
It's very things. Okay. And or it's called tumbleweed, and it is a scourge in urban areas, and it is spread into our special areas here, and grows.
And where they're rolling across the highways, they're kind of a hazard to traffic too.
That's right. And then next to it, well, actually we have 3. Look at here, and here is a knapweed that somebody pulled up and left, which is not a good idea.
Because this is going to keep right on propagating.
Yes, this is spotted knapweed, and the seeds are still going to be dispersed. So we're going to take this one home with us.
Okay.
Okay. And this is really serious when it invades a new ecosystem.
In fact, a friend of mine that lives just about a half mile from here bagged 50 bags of this and hauled it off. But you're right, if you don't haul it off, the seeds are going to spread and get out.
So we'll put it right here, and we will pick it up on our way back in.
We'll take it with us. And we'll also talk about stewardship on the trail, which is terribly important.
That's right. Now, when we have sage step, we obviously have sage brushes, sagebrush. But there are 3 indicator species, right?
Well, there's several. So it's shrub steppes, what they would typically call it. And so you can picture the steppes of Mongolia would be all grassland. And so if you add some shrubs into that, it becomes shrub steppe. And so here, the big sagebrush, which is the one we just saw, and also bitterbrush, which is one that is...
And we'll get some bitterbrush. Yep.
And bitterbrush is the other one. And these sage hills, or these foothills, the bitterbrush was really important because that's winter deer habitat. The deer like to eat it in the winter.
And the lupin is...
Yes, and this lupin, if we want to talk about names.
Okay.
So the lupin has a little bit of an identity crisis right now.
Okay.
The people that figure out plant names, called taxonomists, they've been struggling with lupins for years. And so this particular lupin has been called sulfur lupin because it has a yellow form and a blue form. And this is the blue form, obviously. And they're thinking now this is a different species. But what the species name is,
who knows?
Really know.
Then we won't worry about it. Let's go for a walk.
Let's go for a walk. We're going to go for a walk, and when we come back, more Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees right here on the NCW Live channel.
Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees will be right back after this.
Are you wanting high-speed internet but don't have access to PUD fiber? Try Sky-Fi high-speed wireless internet from Localtel. Call 888-8888 today.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life channel.
And welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees. I am Dan Kuntz. We're at the Sage Hill Trails, just outside of western Wenatchee, working our way up the trail on a beautiful, beautiful day. When we think about this, we think of two things. It's absolutely gorgeous this time of year. You need to come up and enjoy it while you can. And number two, the summer of 2015, Bonnie, wildfires swept through this area, and it changed the ecosystem, sometimes for bad, sometimes for good. Talk about the wildfires and their effect in this area from 2 years ago.
Well, one of the things we're going to see is that our species, sage, burns. And when the sage burns, it does not come back. It has to be replanted. But it allows areas to open up so other things can bloom beautifully. And here, will you tell us what we have in front of us?
Yeah, so here I like to call these the big three of the shrub steps. So we've got arrowleaf balsam root, that's a big yellow sunflower-like flowers. The lupin, we already talked about. And these small yellow flowers are bare stem lomatium.
And what's that?
Well, it's got a number of other names. It's in the carrot family. It's also called pestle parsnip because the roots were eaten by Native Americans and ground up into kind of a flower. That's where the pestle comes from. But these three are just a classic shrub step, and even up into towards Leavenworth, you see these three growing together.
And so, I'm going to come over here and we'll zoom in on. This is the rabbit brush, and there's blooms left over from last year. It blooms in September, right?
Yeah, right. A rabbit brush is a late bloomer compared to sagebrush, which blooms in the spring.
Okay.
And in here also, there's a vetch of some kind. Look here. My goodness, when you look closely, there's just all sorts of things.
There is a lot going on. There's also a whole bunch of bulbous bluegrass, which is a non-native grass, terrific pasture grass, but it really fills in and takes up a lot of space where some of the native plants grow.
If it's non-native, how did it get here, Don?
Well, it was planted purposely for pastures.
Okay.
And what makes it such a good pasture grass is when these get a little older, instead of seeds, they will actually be bulbils. So in other words, it's a little plant, and they fall off ready to go. They start growing in the fall. They get a head start on the native plants. Oh, you could actually see them there.
Yeah.
And then they form more of a mat, whereas a lot of the native grasses are
Absolutely, I got it.
what they call bunch grasses.
So this is good eating.
Well, if you're a
cow.
chicken, we give them to our chickens, and the cows
Okay.
love it. Yeah, very successful grass.
And
but
it outcompetes quackgrass, right?
quackgrass would be in a moister location. So if
Okay.
you had a moist location, quackgrass and bulbous bluegrass would compete.
And then how about our scourge?
Cheatgrass.
Cheatgrass.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, I don't see cheatgrass out here. And so for some reason there isn't cheatgrass.
Well, that's good news.
That's good news, right? And I think everyone knows cheatgrass, like the bulbous bluegrass, starts to grow in the fall and outcompetes, and it greens up real fast, dries out real fast, and becomes a big fire danger.
And see, but when this book was written, this is the classic book on the plants of the sage steppe areas, and he talks about the grass, but doesn't say anything about it.
That's right, yeah, he just, and this was written probably,
1992.
yeah, so that was, I have to use my fingers, over 25 years ago.
Don, yes.
And before fire was, here, the last 10 years, fire has been a
Sure.
much bigger deal. And then you see the burnt sagebrush stalks, and you look out here, this would be steppe, really, because it's all grassland. And the flowers have deep roots, they're perennials, and so they're protected, but the fires came, they were already, all their leaves were dried up. So the fire just raced over the top, left the roots intact, and they could come back even stronger possibly.
Talk about the importance of the root system holding the soil to the earth so none of this just washes right down to the
Yeah,
Columbia
you
River.
can see
Very
some
good
gullies
point.
and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you figure the roots on these, well, I guess we'll talk later, are very,
Yeah.
very deep. And they are holding things together. And when you get these steep slopes when everything burns, like if it's all cheatgrass with a lot shallower root, then that's where you see these landslides.
And that's when you see mudslides and things like that.
Yeah.
One more question before I want to go a little bit farther up on the trail. We had a very cold, wet, kind of long winter followed by a cold, wet spring. Now spring has sprung. Is everything on steroids, for lack of a better term? It's like, here we go! Because that's what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing just growth everywhere. Is that a byproduct of what happened?
It is a great year, and it is. It's like you read about the deserts in California right now, for example. People are flocking there because it's the wettest year in a long time. And I think the same thing's happening here, and we've seen it up where I live in Leavenworth. There's a little annual monkey flower. We've never seen so much of it.
Oh, isn't it interesting? A little pink mimulus or a yellow
It's
one?
a little yellow one.
Yellow one,
It's
okay.
an annual, and usually we'll see a few. This year, they're everywhere.
Wow.
Where to next, Bonnie?
Well, we're going up the hill.
We're going up the hill, getting some exercise.
Well, this is just all grasses. Who would think in these barren hills, as people call it, that there'd be so many grasses? Tell us about these grasses.
Well, this grass is one that's probably familiar to people, and it's called crested wheatgrass. And you see, it's a bunch grass, but the tragedy here is this isn't a native grass. This is a grass that was actually brought in to replace native bunch grasses. And its root structure is different, and some of the pollinators that use it are not our native pollinators. So there's places they're actually removing crested wheatgrass and going back with blue bunch wheatgrass, which we haven't seen any yet on our trip.
Now, one of the things I think is really interesting about bunch grasses, because they are very, very dense. I mean, they grow in a bunch. Nice name. But look how many things are growing with them. There's two other grasses? And one other grass. There's two, no, they're just the bulbous bluegrass, right?
Right, the bulbous screwgrass, it's everywhere.
And then the limatium.
Right.
Are all growing in where this has gathered water as it runs down the stems, and so it makes a little environment for other things to grow. Who's this? Do you know? I mean, this is another little. Here, look at this, another little grass.
I don't know, Bonnie.
Guess what? I don't either. So
We stumped the expert.
But no, but here's the deal: is that it's just the fact that another thing can grow here. Isn't this fabulous?
It's amazing. And you mentioned pollinators. You can't, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there are bees all over the place out there doing their job on this beautiful spring day.
Yeah, look at that.
And they like lomations.
A meadowlark is singing. Isn't
Yes,
that great?
isn't this beautiful?
Yeah. Okay, let's
Can we
go.
make this a 5-hour show?
Yes, by
Let's
all
do
means.
it.
Okay, and Don, it looks like here's our native grass, isn't it?
Right, so here's our blue bunch wheatgrass, and you see it's the same bunch grass style, and then this is the seed head. It's lost its seeds from last year, but you can see it's not as feathery as the crested wheatgrass. And so this will grow and have multiple stalks, lots of seeds.
And these are some of the babies that are from those seeds, aren't they?
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is what a healthy steppe environment would look like. You'd have these spaced out with some open space in between.
The
And-
purpose
and
of the
as
open
the
space
baby-
is what exactly, Don? Why are they not all together? Is there a reason for that? Why they're kind of spaced out?
There probably is.
Okay. but
Water, I would think.
Water, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, they're
Yeah, it could-
competing. They're competing for water. They're competing for nutrients.
And one of the things that
Baby
we don't
sage.
have good examples here is the in-between space would be what they call a biotic crust. It would be moss, lichens,
Okay.
cyanobacteria, and
Well,
so
look
there's
here.
maybe a little bit of
We have a
moss
little bit
in
of
there.
crust, but of course, since the area's been burned, that probably got rid of a lot of the crust.
Right.
But see, look at that gray. We have just a little bit. No mosses. I lied. Look there.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of
Yeah,
moss.
there's a little bit of moss.
And that's what an undisturbed shrub steppe would look like.
Right.
And that has a deer print in it.
Yeah.
Look at that wet deer print.
So this is native. Is this by definition then a hardier grass than something that would be introduced by man?
Generally, because the roots are really, really deep, it can handle droughts, but you know, they probably don't seed well until you have a nice moist year. So,
Okay. And we
so-
certainly had that.
Yeah, so a year like this, the plants get off to a better start.
And look at everybody getting started. There is a bitter brush. There is a baby sage. There is yarrow. And look how rich this one little place is.
And this time of year, everything starts growing.
Yeah, yeah.
Where to?
Well, we're going to take a break,
Okay,
and
let's
then
take a
we're
break.
going to go look at flowers.
Ooh, flowers are next. Green thumbs and dirty knees. Don't go anywhere.
Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees will be right back after this.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Kerry Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life channel.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees. We're at the Sage Hills Trail in West Wenatchee, working our way up the trail system, which has become terribly popular.
Isn't
over
it
the last
amazing?
few years.
We spent years working on the riverfront.
And for good reason. It's beautiful.
Beautiful trails and everything, and now people truly appreciate what's around us.
You get the best of both worlds if you want a nice flat walk with pretty flowers and a great garden that we talked about last year. You remember?
Right, the Zero Garden with
Zero
the
Garden.
Master Gardeners.
And then, or you can come right up here and enjoy these incredible views of the Wenatchee Valley, God's country, and enjoy this Mother Nature's
bird
garden.
Song and Mother
it's
Nature's
just
garden.
gorgeous.
And
What are we looking
Mother
at?
Nature has planted what, Don?
Yeah, so we got our balsam root, but then this was kind of a fun find here, and we're starting to see it as we go up the hill. This little linear leaf daisy, and it's like a daisy that would grow in your garden, and it's small, and it's got like the balsam root, which would be like a big cousin. It's got disc flowers and ray flowers, and be like any daisy would have the little flower. It's a composite flower, so lots of little disc flowers in the middle, and then the ray flowers on the sides.
And a very vibrant yellow. Just a
Very
spectacular color.
Yeah, different. I mean, it's in more intense yellow. I mean, you think balsam root's an intense yellow, but that little daisy is amazing. And then, of course, the more subtle Lomatian yellow. And then what's that on the ground? You see that?
Yeah, it's
Can we get this?
Yeah, we
A
can do a
mat.
shot of this. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, so it's a mat here of a pussy toe, and I think it's one of two pussy toes, and we would know if it had flowers. There's low pussy toes, which has a single composite flower, same family as these guys, but a whitish flower. Or it could also be the one that's kind of name challenged. It's Antenaria microphylla. Is
Oh,
the name.
yes. Can you say that again 3
Yeah, it'll
times?
have small, several flowers per head. So we would know in maybe a month when that has some flowers.
But I am very interested in the fact that the little leaves are so far apart, and then there's a blank space inside it. But it's not like bare dirt. It looks like it has like mulch.
Yeah, and it was certainly
Natural mulch.
Yeah, it probably started. It was this little small plant, and as it grew, some of those older parts of it in the middle died. But there's enough organic material in there that the grass hasn't invaded it to take over. But the roots certainly are holding a lot of soil together.
Good, and see, and that's probably its purpose is to keep it from blowing away.
Here's a question then for you, Bonnie. Last week we did the show at Cascade Analytical, talked about soil testing. What do you suppose the soil is here if you took this down to have tested?
I would say there's a lot of clay in it, just from the way it's cracked and dried. You know what? We could pour a little water on it.
If you don't mind, I'm just kind of curious because
Okay.
I fancy myself a soil expert now.
Right.
I'm not, but I fancy myself one.
You fancy yourself lots of things. You're a fancy man.
I am.
Okay, so
let's-
the test on whether
Go
or
ahead and
not
turn that
the
just- there you
test
go.
on clay is does it stain your hands?
And it does. It stains your
Can I
hand. Go right ahead. The shirt's paid for. Shirt's paid for.
Anyway, so it's clay.
Okay.
Well, the soils here are certainly not real fertile like you
Right.
have
Yeah.
farmland.
Okay,
We're gonna keep hiking.
we're gonna keep hiking.
Let's keep hiking.
Okay.
Well, we've worked our way up the trail just a little bit more on this beautiful day. Why don't we do this every week?
We should do this every week. Is this just absolutely amazing? It smells like grapes, doesn't it?
I love this place. I need to spend more time here.
So tell us about this. Tell us about this plant, Don.
Yeah, this one right here, because it's everywhere. In fact, the genesis of this show is I have a friend of mine who lives very, very close by to where we're sitting, and he talked about how the balsam root, right, the yellow, it comes out every year. Every year, regardless of the circumstances of the winter or the spring, these are everywhere. But this year, these things are going nuts. He said he's never seen this much violet, this much purple on this particular section of land. Why is this thing going nuts this year?
So this is the sulfur lupin again, and the lupins, they like a little more moisture, and I think this year we're just seeing with all the water that was in the ground, it's just their year. And plants that do that, the annuals more than perennials, but these guys are having a great year. And one of the interesting things, we actually have two lupins out here in the foothills, the sulfur lupin, and then the other one is the silky lupin, which there was one.
Which is the one right
just
there.
right over here. And its flower, it blooms just a little bit later, and so its flowers are not quite ready, but it's more tall, more of a stalk with more leaves along the stem. This one, most of the leaves are down at the base with a few little leaves on the stem. But that other one is going pretty much straight up with the flowers at the end of a stalk.
They're beautiful. I'd love to see these every year all over the place.
Yes, but you know, one of the things is that people think they're so lovely that they want to have them in their garden.
Oh, no.
But when we look at the root system, okay, that we have this wonderful little handout about roots, you can see that the roots go down about 10 feet. Well, there's no way that you can dig 10 feet to get this. And so if you try to dig it up in the dark of the night to take it home, all you'll be doing is killing it.
And committing a crime while you're at it.
Well, yes, you could be doing that too, but you know, they're domesticated lupins, but also Derby Canyon Natives up in Peshastin has many of these plants where he collects seeds. He has a license to collect seeds and then grows them. So if you love to have these in your garden, because lots of people like native plants in their garden, don't try digging them. It's not worthwhile.
The whole ecosystem of what we're looking at here, Dawn, is to me fascinating, and it's a story that needs to be told, don't you think?
Yeah.
This is Mother Nature's garden. If man had never showed up at all and nobody had planted anything, this is pretty much what you would get, right?
Right, and that's what's so nice about having this area preserved is people can see that and get to appreciate it. It's kind of a short growing season, but still, it's so beautiful when it happens.
And it's right here in town.
It's right here in town.
Yeah.
And if I could add one other thing, I just noticed this. Right between your legs is one of our native grasses. So that is
Which one?
this one right here, Sandberg's bluegrass.
Okay.
Oh yes, look at there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that one, you see, it looks just slightly different than the bulbous bluegrass.
Okay.
Give me that other.
Okay. That's the Lomatia.
Help me out, Bonnie.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to be careful here. Okay.
There it is.
Right here.
That's
There it is. Okay.
Yeah, very slightly different. And it would be where we see all the bulbous bluegrass. That's what would normally be here. It's also a bunch grass, but not nearly as big as the blue bunch wheatgrass.
but it's just as yummy, probably.
If you were to venture to guess as we walk up this hill system, how many different species and types of plants and weeds and even the bad stuff that we've talked about, what's the variety here? How many?
Well, I'll bet you if you spend the whole spring and summer coming out looking regularly, you'd be easily over 100 plants.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what's fun about that is you get these surprises, things that you're not expecting. You'll say, oh my gosh, there's something new.
Like these, for instance, which have always been here. It's just that every once in a while, when we have a nice wet spring and a very cool spring, it seems to like it because it's just the whole area is carpeted with these. It's beautiful.
I think it's time to go find some more surprises.
Let's go find some more surprises.
Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees will be right back after this.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life channel.
Dan, is this a clear day?
I can see forever.
There we go.
Or that I want to be Julie Andrews and just do this for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. The hills are alive. Anyway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, now I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Well, we're going to talk about how the fact that houses and subdivisions just keep, farther on up the foothills, and we're encroaching on, quite frankly, wildlife habitat.
Yeah, and mule deer. This is a mule deer habitat. And one of the things that happens is that during the winter, the mule deer say, that arborvitae hedge down there, I think that's pretty tasty. And people are always asking me, what don't deer eat? What can I plant the deer don't eat? And I'm going, I'm not sympathetic.
Yeah.
I have to say, why are you living in an interface area if you don't want the deer around?
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
And also deer will eat anything.
Yeah, they'll eat anything.
No matter what, if they're hungry enough.
And the good thing about deer is they're browsers. They just nibble a little bit of
That's
everything.
right. Yeah, and so they take the tulips. Big deal, right? But I think that if you choose to live here on this interface and have these views, that's the trade-off. You feed the deer, and you do that. I hear a meadowlark in the background, but so there's not very many birds.
I was going to ask you about this.
We're looking at this beautiful, beautiful flower field, but there's not very many places for birds to perch. And birds need to be able to sit and look around and see if there's any danger, or to hop up. And there also isn't any place for them to hide, like to have a nest, because most of these things will die down, and I don't know whether their little precocious birds will be ready to run away before the stuff is down. There's two meadowlarks. That's the first bird I ever learned as a child.
Was the meadowlark?
Meadowlark, yes, yes.
So what other animal species? I suppose rabbits live up here. We can't see them, but they're probably running around, right?
There's probably wild rabbits of some kind.
And snakes.
Yeah.
In fact, there's somewhere along this trail, there's a den of rattlesnakes.
Oh.
And they had some event here, and one of my friends was assigned to be where the rattlesnakes were to make sure if one wants to cross the trail.
They would see him first.
Right, right.
So somewhere there's a den of rattlesnakes here.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees. We'll see. This is gorgeous. Now, Don, what we're seeing here, what folks are seeing at home, is this beautiful sea of purple and gold that hasn't been seen in this area for probably 20 years, because of the cool, wet spring. But if we were farther up, in a higher elevation, which places we can't go because there's no trail there, what are some of the maybe the flowers and things like that we can't see that are probably up there that you know about?
And see, you can tell that it changes because look, there's ponderosa pines
Exactly.
on the top of the hill, so you know that there is something different there.
Yeah, and so a couple things are going on as you go up in elevation. One is the things we see that have already done blooming here may be just starting to bloom up higher. And the other one is you will change species as you go up. And so the one that really comes to mind when we talk about the yellow flowers, so down here it's balsam root. The farther up we go, at some point we're going to start to get into arnica, which is another yellow composite flower. But again, we'll get trees. In fact, you go from ponderosa pine to Douglas fir, and then ultimately as you get up higher to grand fir. And then you get more shade, and you get plants that can grow in the shade.
And also, we mentioned what a cool, wet spring it's been. It was a long winter, and also a very slow snow melt. And so the soil here still has a great deal of water content in it, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I think so, yeah.
And
yeah.
the water is running down underneath. We can't see it, but it's there.
I see an elderberry bush. Umble. See the dry
Yes.
umble left from last year?
Yeah, so what happens, you can see some of the dry things in here, and I'll see if I can find one a little bit closer. You're left with the flowers on this lomatium are what they call an umbel, and that they are rays coming from a central point, and you'll be left with these dried rays, which can be really pretty when they're frosty in December, before the snow really falls.
And with little spider webs on them.
Yeah, with spider webs,
Yeah,
so you get those sort of things. The balsam roots, they'll be like dried flowers. Lupin, same way. You can watch the seeds come out on the lupin. In fact, this year, if one wanted to collect seeds of the sulfur lupin here, great year to do it because they would be here. And that's one way to get them to grow in your garden, is to collect some seeds and plant them and see what happens.
And it's another 3 to 5 year process
Exactly.
in order to be able to grow them.
But
Yeah.
hopefully, with the way this year is going, what we're seeing right now on this show might be here for longer than it would normally be, which is good. What do you think, Bob?
I don't think so.
You don't think
because
so?
we're going to have some hot weather soon,
Eventually.
and I think that finishes
Right,
it
it
off.
probably depends on if it got hot really fast,
Yeah.
and stayed hot, they probably wouldn't be very long.
But I think we have a few more weeks of it. I would like to hope.
I would
You know,
hope, yeah.
what's the long-range forecast, Mr. Weather Guy?
Pretty much a normal summer.
Okay, well, what's a normal next couple of weeks?
Mid-70s.
Well,
The occasional raindrop.
Okay.
Mid-70s. More sun than clouds.
Okay, there's hope.
Yeah, there's hope.
Well, and some things like the silky lupin is just starting to bloom. There's a buckwheat here that will be, that's actually a summer bloomer, so no buckwheat, and so that'll be in August, say. So there'll be still things happening out here.
And yet we still have swaths, Don, of where there's no flowers at all that we can see, which I find interesting. I mean, there's a big patch of it, and then not 10 feet away, there's nothing. It makes you wonder, how could that be? We don't really know, do we?
Well,
There could be any number of reasons.
Don was saying how the soil is thicker here, and that's what is supporting the root systems for all of these plants.
Yeah, and what was interesting as we walked through there, it was mostly silky lupin. And so what that would suggest to me, it can handle a little drier territory. And so there's probably a shallower soil. Bonnie was even thinking it looks almost like part of that hillside might have sloughed off at some point and maybe washed down to a shallower soil that can't support, say, the sulfur lupin like we're seeing here, or the sagebrush.
And the
Yeah,
one
we
thing,
don't have sage in here at all.
none. And the one thing,
Some burned ones.
Yeah.
I don't want to put a damper on this, but the one thing that concerns me is that we get into a regular, long, hot, dry summer, this becomes fuel again for another fire. And it would be pretty, because we just had one that ripped through here a couple of years ago, right?
You know, but usually there's different grasses that are more fire prone, right? like these grasses will be down by the time it's hot and dry.
Yeah, and they'll still burn, but it's what's nice here, not seeing cheatgrass, is you get into what the cheatgrass does is it dries up really fast. It's like I think we've got a thunderstorm in the forecast tonight.
Yes, we do.
So we could have a thunderstorm tonight. None of this should burn, but later on, maybe a month from now, if it was all cheatgrass, it would be very likely to burn. But with the fires, one of the things that impacts, a lot of factors that impact fires, one of them is a real lush spring followed by a real dry summer would mean there's going to be more fires. So hopefully we're not into that for this year.
Always keep your fingers crossed. In the meantime, you folks out there, you have to get out here and enjoy this while you can. And this is just one area. Dawn,
Right.
you live in Leavenworth. Everything's a little bit later in
Right,
Leavenworth.
so we're just starting in Leavenworth.
Right.
But there's also, you know, a number of different trail areas here with the Land Trust. You know, say the Sage Hills out that way. I mean, there's all sorts of places to get out after you go. Have a family picnic.
Oh yeah.
You know.
But remember to stay on the trail, people.
Yeah.
That's an important thing, to stay on the trail. It's so tempting to go tiptoe through the tulips, with
Right.
apologies to Tiny Tim, but
That's
don't.
right. Yeah.
Don't.
Or don't pick things either.
In fact, that's a good idea. Don't pick things. And why is it so critical that people don't just tromp right on out and look at the flowers? What are we doing when we do that, Don?
Yeah, well, what happens, a couple things. One, you crush these plants for this very short season. You crush whatever energy they were building. You can also damage some of the shallow-rooted species. And then if like say cutting a switchback, that's kind of a classic. If everybody does that, pretty soon that part of the trail starts to wash out, and then that's bad too.
And then just until it does wash out, you've compacted the soil.
Very true.
And so you kill the roots. I mean, like, look how nothing grows on here.
Nothing
because
grows
it's
on here.
compacted. It's
Right.
compacted. And that is, it's not fair to the roots.
Yeah, and
It's
some
like
of these,
people who park their cars, you know,
Right.
under their trees on their lawn, you know, and it really does impact the tree.
and look, you're just looking at the lomatiums. The first year's growth is 1 or 2 little spoon-shaped leaves, and so you step on that, very likely
Yeah.
you'd kill the plant.
Yeah, see, look at that. There's a little. No, that's. Oh, there it is, right there. Here's a little
Yeah,
guy
just
just
one
starting.
little leaf.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's like one footprint would just finish that off.
And yet the wildlife don't care. They'll walk wherever they want to walk, right?
But you know what? I don't think they break things in the same way that people do.
In what way?
Well, because people aren't paying attention, and I think that the deer look very carefully where they put their feet.
Well, they have a better purchase than four-wheel
and they
drive.
also have,
whereas-
and they also have small. They also have small feet.
yeah.
And this is a huge deer area. This particular
Yeah,
geographic
yeah.
area, a lot of deer. And of course, with the heavy winters that we have, they're just getting closer and closer into town to go find those arborvitaes that they love to eat
That's
so
right.
much.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and you know another interesting thing, you think about the Great Plains, that's a grassland
Sure.
that evolved with buffalo, trampling everything. So there's a whole different kinds of grasses there compared to here, where there weren't the big grazing animals. And so the deer are very light on the land relative to, say, a bison. So you get a different kinds of plants.
You know, when I lived in Australia, that's one of the things that they talked about a lot was that kangaroos were very light on the land, and yet cows had, you know, they really tore up the ground, and so areas where they had been grazing not only were compacted but torn up, and so after a few years nothing grew.
Right, and that's with that biological crust, very impacted by.
It's funny you bring that up because we started out this program by talking about invasive species, non-native species that, if you don't like Australia, you know, they have strict quarantine laws, or it could take over and eat other animals and plants. What are the absolute worst non-native plants in this area that you would like us to see go away tomorrow?
Well, cheatgrass is probably the
Cheatgrass
one that
is number
everybody
one.
would say.
But the
Yeah.
cheatgrass covers the west, so that's
Yes,
not,
it's here.
yeah, it covers
Yeah.
the west. And so I would like to make sure that people, because our noxious weed season is coming up, and we're going to be talking with Julie Sanderson pretty soon, but it's important to make sure we don't carry knapweed with us, knapweed seeds in the wheels of our bicycles.
Or in our shoes.
Or in our shoes.
Or in our socks,
and spread that.
pant legs,
yeah,
they
yeah.
get in there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how they spread.
Yeah, and
They-
Russian thistle the same way.
Yeah, Russian, that's the worst. That's just the worst.
Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees will be right back after this.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life Channel.
Look over there.
Yeah, that's puccoon. So that's an interesting plant. We talked earlier about the Latin names, and so that one's Latin name, the genus, is Lithospernum, which means stone seed, and the seeds aren't like little rocks. And you mentioned this book, Bonnie, The Sagebrush Country. And in here it says, for puccoon, it says, puccoon and related species are two of many plants that Plains Indians used widely as medicine. The roots had a dual function as a food when cooked and a remedy for respiratory ailments.
Respiratory ailments, huh?
Don't try it at home,
though.
though.
No, don't try it at home. Right.
But that's the only one that we see on our long field
No,
trip.
there's
We've
two.
seen hundreds and hundreds of acres. There's a little patch here, but we didn't see them anyplace else, did we?
That's one I've never seen a lot of it at any one place. And you always ask that question, why would it be here and nowhere else?
Yeah, that's
And this is related to forget-me-nots. The plant forget-me-not.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to remember to forget that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating trip.
Another yellow. I mean, look how many different types of yellow that we have seen.
Lots of yellow.
Now look, here's a cousin of the puccoon, and again, it looks like it has a forget-me-not flower. And notice how it has a little orange circle inside of this brilliant yellow. Look at how many colors of yellow we've seen this walk today. Isn't that fun?
I have an artist friend who talks about when you go in a place, she'll say, how many greens do you see or how many yellows? And most people say, oh, I'd like 2 or 3. And she'll say, I can see 15 different yellows or greens.
Right. How many names for snow do you have?
I tell you one thing, if you were into painting, I'd want to paint this.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Great topic.
You'd run out of purple and yellow and green, but you know. Just
But you know, and then look at here. This little flower is just sneaking throughout the grass all the way around. Look at that. It's much more of it than you think. It's all the way up the hill there. And so sometimes you just have to sort of look closely. And then closer.
Is that another meadowlark?
It is.
Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees will be right back after this. Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net. Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life Channel.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees. Wrapping it up here for this gorgeous edition. This is the best looking show we've ever done.
Well, I thought you were the best looking.
No, I cannot hold a candle to this gorgeous, gorgeous area.
You know, now that you say that, that's true.
I agree. Tell me a little bit more before we wrap things up about we referenced this book quite a bit.
Right.
It's still in print.
It's still in print, and it's just one of the classics. I mean, there are many books that are available, and we also have the Land Trust has a little flower guide, but this just has the flowers, and it's accurate, and the names are accurate still, and there's your little mimulus.
Yeah, and Ron Taylor, the author of the book, was a professor at Western Washington University. He's passed away, but he was honored as a fellow in the Washington Native Plant Society for all the work that he did.
Speaking of societies, talk a little bit, Don, about your society. Might as well plug it while you're here.
Sure. So the Washington Native Plant Society, it's about 1,500 members all over the state, 12 different chapters, and it's full of wildflower plant enthusiasts, professional botanists, and it's a great exchange of information for people that want to learn more. So it's a great organization, www.wnps.org.
And you meet at the museum?
Yes, we meet during the non-flowering season, so like September to March we meet, and then we have field trips in the spring and summer.
And on your website are the field trips that have already been scheduled?
Yes. So that's where the place to go to find out what field trips we have.
Okay.
But I recommend while the getting is good to go out and enjoy this gorgeous scenery right here in Wenatchee's back door.
That's right, and you know, it could just become something you do every week this year.
Yeah, it's good exercise. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at.
And we had fun.
We had fun.
And we had fun with you.
Well, I'm glad to join you.
Oh, Don, thank you so much.
You're
and
welcome.
thanks for teaching us lots of new information. I just hope I can hold on to it all.
Well, the secret is to hold on to a little bit of it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
next
Thanks.
time.
That gives me permission not to have to
There
worry
you
about
go.
it.
What I do
Okay.
is wear earplugs so the information doesn't leak out.
Good thinking.
Till next week, everybody. Don, again, thanks again. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week on Green Thumbs and Dirty Knees on the NCW Life Channel.
Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life Community Calendar at ncwlife.com.